What's up, everyone? Welcome to our Security Squawk podcast. I am Brian Horning here with Reginald Andre and Randy Bryan. Randy, you look very glitchy today. You're having internet issues. So if Randy just disappears, Randy's having internet issues.
What the heck?
So it's going to seem like you're AI generated and you're really not here.
Yeah, I saw it too on my screen. I turned off the Mac Studio Light thing and it went away. So it has something to do with that. So,
all right. So today's show, guys, we're going to go into a little bit of a different. Normally, we like to talk about the trending things that are happening in cybersecurity and especially, cyber attacks against businesses. Today, last episode of the year. We aren't doing one next week, right? Because we're all on vacation, right? Yeah. So this will be our last episode of the year. We're going to go a little bit long today, and we're going to change the format up a little bit to a little bit of a Q&A where we're going to pop up on the screen some questions that we've been asked throughout the year, and we thought it would be a good idea to address some of those questions on today's show and talk about what's going to happen in 2024. But before we do, remember, the show's free. We don't bore you with ads. In exchange for that and this content and the education that we're giving everyone, we just ask that you help us grow the show by sharing our show. That can be as simple as commenting on one of the videos that you see on social media. It could be as simple as you just clicking that share button when you see our videos to let your friends and family know that some worthwhile information exists around cybersecurity that you're not going to get through mainstream media, because we need to bring awareness to this problem. Because as we know, 2023 was a record year for cyber criminals, and the trend line is not going to go in the other direction just because the year changes to 2024. The trend line is going to continue to increase. Businesses are going to continue to be attacked, and people's personal information is going to continue to be exposed to cyber criminals who will use that information for nefarious purposes. Things like identity theft, personal extortion on individuals are all things that we saw at the end of 2023. And 2024 is going to be a big year for cyber criminals figuring out ways they can monetize all the data that they stole in 2023. So remember, this is going to impact you not only at your workplace, but it's going to start impacting you personally. And it's our job and our mission to make sure that businesses understand what the threat is and what they can start doing to protect their businesses so consumers don't have to worry about their data being stolen and being misused if they do business with a certain company. Anything I missed there, guys?
I always like to kind of look at statistics, and I just Googled, crime rates and trends. And I'm seeing violent crimes are down, property crimes are down year over year for the last 20 years, murders, everything like that. But cyber is the only one that's way high and continuing going year over year.
Yeah, 100%. So, like I said, share the show. Don't be greedy. Don't consume this just for yourself and not let other people know about it. Help us with our mission of protecting all these people. Share the show. All right, let's get into it, guys. Let's start throwing some questions up on the screen that we can start answering. At the bottom, we have our banner. We're going to change up the ticker, and we're going to roll the questions that we're talking about so you kind of have context as to what we're saying. And I'm pulling questions out of a list that we have here from various times and people across the internet that have sent us information. Here's the first one we decided to pull out of the hat. And what we're going to do is kind of like a round robin answer question type of thing. We'll all get input on these questions so you can hear different perspectives from different cybersecurity business owners. So if my business suffers a cyber attack, what are the immediate steps I should take to mitigate the damage? And who wants to go first?
I'll go first. First
ahead.
thing you should do is disconnect the internet. So if you have a physical office, go to that server room or bathroom, wherever your router is, and just unplug the internet And second thing you want to do is contact your IT provider, your to let them know so that they can then start to open up the playbook that hopefully as well and help you through the process.
Yeah, and I want to clarify. So Andre mentioned disconnecting from the internet. He didn't say pull the plug. And we should probably talk about this just for a second. Like, why not pull the plug? And I'll say, if you pull the plug, one of the things that's going to happen is if there's any kind of residual left in memory, that's going to go away when you pull the plug. And so you may potentially cause it to not be able, like an expert, to come in and figure out exactly why it happened. And that's one of the things in a mitigation. You're going to want to know why it happened so you can prevent it from happening again. So that's a very good point. Not yanking the power, but disconnecting the Ethernet. Turning off the internet at the office. What about other machines that aren't infected? What do we do with those?
Well, you don't know really if they're infected, right?
Right.
Or you just mean showing the symptoms like another machine, for example.
Yeah, like let's say I show up at my office and like there's one workstation that's encrypted, but I also have 4 other workstations. So should I disconnect all of them? Should I turn off the internet for the whole office? Should I unplug all the cords? Like, should I allow them to continue to be on the same switch, but unplug the internet? Like, how far does this go? I know I'm being kind of rhetorical, but
You're also being nerdy.
Yes.
What's a switch? So, I mean, I agree with what you guys are saying, obviously, but what if somebody doesn't have IT support? Like, what if they don't have an IT guy? Well, yeah, we should disconnect from the internet, right? But at the same time, like, what if somebody doesn't know who to call? Like, who would you recommend they call if they're not working with an IT company? You recommend
one of us,
right? But what do they search on Google? I mean, let's go there. What if they don't even know what to look for on Google? What would you recommend that they do?
I mean,
like a cybersecurity remediation or cybersecurity incident response. Something with the word cybersecurity in there.
Yep.
So,
and they're going to be in for I would say reach out now. We say this all the time. Just like if you own a beach house on the coast, you want to find a contractor now because there's going to be hurricanes later. If you live on the Gulf Coast, at least, I can't speak for the rest of the country. Find a contractor now, so when you do have a hurricane, you already have somebody to make contact with. Because if you're listening right now, and let's say you wake up tomorrow and your office is breached, it is going to be a rude awakening just Googling people and trying to find them. Because you will find people, you're going to find people that will not talk to you for under $1,000 an hour, or they'll do like a minimum of 100 hours, or there's a lot of stuff like that that's out there you'll have to wade through. All this time, your business is going to be down. So this is something we really need to be thinking about and planning for now.
Yeah. And I'm going to just dovetail off of what the message you were given there, and with my answer to this question, which is, it's really one of those questions that you shouldn't be asking, because if my business suffers a cyber attack, what are the immediate steps I should take to mitigate the damage? Well, the reality, the real answer to that question is you mitigate the damage before a cyber attack, right? That is, Andre's probably said this 100 times this year on this podcast about reducing the blast radius. That's what cyber defenders do. They assess the situation and they put things in place so if something goes poorly, it's not going to blow up the whole company, right? And if you want to mitigate damage, you need to do it beforehand, because if you're thinking about mitigating damage after the fact, that blast radius is so big that there may be nothing else you can do but close up shop and walk away. And that's the reality. So
that's a great point. And I think even just thinking about it literally, man, like if there was some kind of, national kind of attack? Do you want to be prepared, or do you want to just be walking around with no idea? And when you talk about limiting the blast radius, that's literally what's going to happen. And if you're prepared, it's going to be a blip. I mean, we've all had this where we've had what could have been a huge cyber incident for one company, but it was a company that we were actively protecting, that it's a blip, and 2 hours later it's over. And you're just, going through all the files to make sure, like all the traffic and all that jazz, just to make sure nothing else is there. But it becomes a blip instead of, bringing down the business for 3 weeks or 3 months or whatever. So great point.
Yep. So moving right along, Andre, you got something to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, just like if you got in a car accident, that you're calling 911. Same thing for cyber. You should already know who you're calling and things like that.
All right. So next question we got is, what are some essential cybersecurity measures every business, regardless of size, should implement? And this is kind of what I was talking about. Like, you got to think about this stuff beforehand. So what are some things that people should have in place? We talk about cyber insurance all the time. So I think a lot of things we're going to mention here are probably going to be things that you just have to do to maintain cyber insurance. So my first thing is you got to have multi-factor authentication on everything. And I'm taking the easy way out with that one. I know, guys, but at the end of the day, like, that's the biggest thing right now with businesses, is them understanding that they have to protect passwords and stolen passwords some way. And multi-factor authentication is the most effective way to do that right now. So every business needs to look at where their critical things are, their email, maybe where they store their files, maybe their line of business applications that they need to run their business, things like EMR systems in healthcare, case management systems in law firms, in your accounting system where you're doing your clients' accounting and taxes, whatever system that may be. These things should all be protected with multi-factor authentication so they can't be breached by a cyber criminal who has valid passwords. Pass it to Andre. What's your
Yeah, I'm going to go with training. For the past
100%.
year, we've been doing all of these news articles, and it's not because the hackers were so sophisticated and figured out a way to get in. It was just them picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, click on the start menu and type in, TeamViewer for me and give me the code," or something like that. So not only training itself, where you just check boxing and saying, "Hey, we had the annual training," but making this part of the culture, part of the company's culture, that everybody's aware, especially in whatever line their business. If you're in finance, they should be aware, hey, we're a title company, and this is what the bad guys are trying to do. They're trying to do wire fraud. They're trying to change bank account information and things like that. So whatever that department is, even if it's marketing, hey, marketing, you manage our social media, our Facebook, Instagram. Just know that Facebook is never gonna, ask you for this. Or if you get any suspicious things, this is how they can try to get in. So just make it relatable to every single department. Just going one more, the janitor. Hey, if this paper that says, confidential or whatever like that, if you see people just putting things in the trash, speak up and say, this shouldn't be in the trash, and it should be shredded or whatever the case is.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just going to add on to what you said there for a big thing that I've been thinking about around this stuff, Andre, and why security and awareness training and a program where you're building a culture of cybersecurity, as you mentioned, is important. We're seeing a lot of issues around this with companies that fail to do this with what's known as shadow IT. And that's when your employees use the tools and things available to them through the internet on their computer. We ran into this not too long ago where, it was discovered that an employee at a company was using one of those commercial VPN products for whatever reason. They had it on their computer, not the company computer, but his own personal computer. and was accessing company resources from that personal computer, which was, triggering all kinds of alarms at our company. And when we looked into it, the person really wasn't in the locations they said they were. They were just using this commercial VPN that moved them around, right? And this person just didn't know he wasn't allowed to do this behavior. He wasn't doing anything malicious. They just didn't realize that they weren't allowed to have something like a NordVPN running while they were accessing, work resources. And when it happened and they got shut off, they learned. But these are things that if you have a good security and awareness training program in place, can be avoided. Not only the situation, but the fact that, the employee didn't know that they couldn't do that kind of thing on, and access company resources when those things are turned on or in place. So, all right, Randy, what's yours?
All right. So y'all already know what I'm going to say. In fact, Andre texted me behind the scenes. He already knows what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it because I call it the unsexiest of all the cybersecurity things, and that is patching. You've got to have patching. It really boils down to this. Like, we've been saying it for 40 years practically, or however long it's been since computers have been around. But it really boils down to this, y'all. If you're not patching, you're sitting on top of a ticking time bomb. If you have a website and you're not patching it, it is going to get hacked. I can promise you that. And you may not see it on the front end, but there's going to be like some purse shop running off the back end or something like that. And it's the same with your computers. It's the same with your routers, your switches. Everything needs to be updated because they are constantly finding vulnerabilities. Some are actively being manipulated by the criminals. Other vulnerabilities are discovered by the quote unquote good side, the good team. But they're constantly putting out updates to remediate for those. And so patching is a huge, huge deal. And that's something you should be doing no matter what. But yeah, that's so now that we got all the low hanging fruit out of the way, what are we going to talk about?
Well, I mean, so, kind of what you were saying there with, just patching and having a process around that in place is critical because a lot of businesses, this is how they're getting hacked right now, right? You think of all the, this Citrix bleed vulnerability is affecting more people than you would. And unfortunately for that one, you had to do more than just patch. Like you basically had to take the systems down. And we work with companies over the past couple of weeks where they're like, hey, we have the FBI telling us that we're still having a problem and we patch this thing. It's like, well, did you shut the server down and kill all the sessions? Oh, no. Well, it's like, you got to read the whole bulletin and understand what you have to do to mitigate the threat. And it was a big deal. So, it's not an easy thing to implement for sure for businesses, but you're 100% right, Randy. Just doing the basic stuff. I mean, that's a more sophisticated type of situation. But just doing the basic stuff is really important, and you got to be able to manage it in some way, shape, or form. And I just don't think businesses fully understand how to do that. So, and then you got to patch your third-party stuff too. So everything needs to be patched.
Your Zoom, your Adobe, Creative Cloud, Adobe Reader, all that stuff, Office, Edge. Yep.
But going back to the thing, I mean, I know the website thing. I mean, why would a cyber criminal, and I'm tossing up a question we can all answer, but why would a cyber criminal want to hack my little company's WordPress website? Well, the easiest answer to that is your website has trust in the internet world, right? It's existed maybe for 10 years, maybe for 5 years, maybe for 7 years. And it's been a good little website. It's always had its security certificate. You put content out, and Google analyzes that and looks at your website probably 3, 4, 5 times a month. And they, say, hey, this is a good website. We're going to allow it to be indexed and things like that. And it's going to appear in the search results. And you've built trust and a good name with your domain and your reputation And then hackers come along and hack your website and start distributing malware on some page that they set up that you don't know exists. And they use your good name and your good trust to spread this malware throughout the internet. And people don't think this is something that could happen to them. And I can tell you it's more than likely going to happen to you if you don't pay attention to what's going on with your website.
And the other bad thing about it is, Brian, that once it gets hacked, Google is very anti-hacked websites.
100%.
Once it gets hacked, it, in layman's terms, puts a very bad taste in Google's mouth about your website. And I've seen sites that were hacked, that were later unhacked, just almost like never returned. Do you know what I mean? From that. I saw one site, a pretty large business in our area. We helped them with it. Took quite a while to get over that. I'm talking like years. It wasn't just an instant comeback. So that's one of those things that it can affect you in a lot more ways than you realize. And you can't just go to your website. I know that this isn't a website show, but you can't just go to your website and go, oh, it looks fine. They actually have like code in there sometimes. If you're logged in and they know who you are, they show you the regular website. But if you're like some rando looking for your business, they show you the hacked purse site or something like that. So anyway, something to keep in mind.
Sure. So thanks, Randy. So we'll move right along to the next one on the list. As a small business owner, what are the most common cyber threats I should be aware of? I'm going to bounce to you first, Randy, since you haven't gone first yet.
Oh, yeah. So, I got to say on this one, email. I'm going to say email. And, we talked about patching. Patching matters, but how do they get that first little foothold? They sometimes they'll be searching the internet and they can just hit you from the internet. Okay, that can happen. But most likely, I would say mid 90%, they're going to get into your network. Their first little foot into your network is going to be email. And so that's a huge threat that businesses need to be aware of, because as a business owner, that means your entire business is at risk. And so, yes, it's a pain in the butt that you have the little tag on the top of your email that says you've never received email from this person. Okay, it's annoying, y'all, but it doesn't take any time to read past it and to move on. But if you were to get a bad email that ended up bringing down your business, that's a lot more pain in the butt. So I would just say, with a huge all caps, bold exclamation marks, email is a huge threat. We can't really stop doing email either. So we need to work how to secure it and then minimize the blast radius. That'd be my big answer.
Andre?
Passwords, reusing passwords. Every week when we've done this show this year, we've talked about where PII, personal identifiable information, is released to the wild. And all the time we say social security, email addresses, passwords. And we know that unfortunately 9 out of the 10 times, I believe the statistic is that people are reusing their passwords for different sites. So the medical group that you store all your personal information, that site was compromised, that password, now the bad guys have it. And because you're using that same password for your Microsoft 365 or other, type of websites, this is a way that they can get in. So having a password manager is one way to resolve that, and also not reusing the same password on all of these sites is another way. But you should be aware that you should not be reusing your passwords.
What about you, Brian?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm having a tough time because you guys stole my two, and I don't like going last now, so I'm going to go first forward. I mean, the most common cyber threat you should be aware of outside of what you guys mentioned is business email compromise, right? And it's cyber criminals getting into your email and the various things that they do once they get into your email. We call these, sometimes drive-by hackers are getting to be known as, right? These are the guys that just pop into your email, learn some things about you, and then try to attack maybe a bigger customer or bigger vendor that you work with. They're not really looking to target you. They're looking to target the people that you work with. And that's a thing that a lot of small businesses need to be aware of. You might be small, but you might be working with bigger targets, or you might have a lot of little customers. Maybe you're a little jewelry store, but you have, 100 or 200 high net worth individuals that frequent your store often. These are things a lot of times that people don't think outside the box as to how a driven cyber criminal can make money off of you and essentially extort you. So I just see small businesses being taken a lot of different ways through business email compromise. So at the end of the day, you could have money stolen because somebody has access to your email, because they misdirect funds and they have the information inside your email. You could have we just saw it the other day. Company was a medical company. They just were sanctioned and fined because one employee had personal health records in their inbox, and that email was compromised. And because those personal health records were sitting in the inbox, and that company had no process for dealing with that information, and it was just sitting in there, and they got access to it. This medical doctor's office has been penalized by Health and Human Services as a result of what they did. There's no reason why PHI should remain in somebody's inbox. Somebody can send you something, right? But you need to delete it. You need to get it out of there. If it's not supposed to be in there, if it's not secure, you need to take it out of there. And businesses can also be the reason that malware spreads throughout the internet, because a cyber criminal decides to get into your email and they don't really see anything that they can make money off of, but maybe they can send a spam or phishing email to one of your contacts, make it look like it comes from you, because it is coming from your account at the end of the day. So people are going to do the things that they're trained to do. They're going to look at, oh yeah, look, it's that person's email. That looks legit to me. And everything kind of adds up. So if they don't, think twice and go, well, maybe they got hacked and maybe I shouldn't click on this, or maybe I should contact them before I do anything with this email to see if they really sent this to me. And sometimes those things don't happen and people click on those emails, and then the scam spreads. Maybe the cyber criminal gets access to that person's email and they go further up the chain. This is how persistent cyber criminals are today. Or maybe they're spreading malware with these links. So when they click on it, now that company's infected with malware and could potentially end up getting ransomware. So that's my thing. You need to be aware of this small business email compromise, because you're more likely to get hit with this than ransomware.
Yeah, and people don't realize you said they're persistent. I mean, this is their job, and like they get their raises, they get their money, they get their accolades over being better and better and better at this. And so they're extremely persistent, because every little thing, every little rabbit hole they can go up and nab another person, nab another company or whatever, it's just more money for them in the long run. So yeah, they are extremely persistent.
All right, here goes another one. How do various cybersecurity laws and regulations affect my business, and how can I ensure compliance? A little technical on this one. Who wants to go first?
What laws? What regulations?
Well, a bunch of them went into effect this year.
Yeah. So I'll go first, so I don't have to go last. We've obviously heard with the Fortune 100 company, the public company, with the SEC regulation, where if there is a breach, there's a certain amount of time that they have to now release this, I believe, to the K1 document or K8 document, or 8K, is it, Brian?
What?
No, it's okay. But basically, there's regulations for the bigger companies, the public companies. There's regulation for the financial service companies. There's now, even with the FTC safeguard rules, regulation there. So the biggest thing that I would say when it comes to how to make sure that you're compliant is that you hire a professional like one of us on the show that has been there, done that, and can now compare what you're supposed to do with the compliance, There's a long list that they want you to do, and then they help you with that process, because it's not just a matter of just saying, okay, we got MFA or we got this, and now we're set. This is an ongoing matter that you have to make sure that your business is staying on top of.
Somebody on Facebook saying they can't hear us. I don't know
Oh,
if it's accurate.
we can hear ourselves.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but somebody on Facebook is saying they can't hear us. I don't know if somebody can look into that.
Yeah, sure. I'll try.
Thanks, Andre. Yeah, I don't know if that's accurate, but check it out for us. Randy, thoughts, or do you want me to go?
I have some thoughts here, because we're assuming that we have some both business owners, CEOs, C-level people that are on right now, that are on this podcast watching. So first off, I'd say first and foremost is you have to take responsibility to figure out what regulation you fall under. You can't just say, oh, well, my IT guy told me this, or, my buddy who's also a blah, blah, blah told me that. You really got to find out. You need to go to your CPA. You need to go to your IT provider. You really need to know what you're covered by. Andre mentioned the FTC safeguards rule, which did go into effect. Well, like a big chunk of it went into effect this summer. I think parts of the law go back like a decade or something like that. But a lot of it went into effect this summer that added in a whole new wide swath of businesses, like CPAs, real estate brokers, mortgage brokers, payroll processor. The list, not payroll processors, but payroll, paycheck cashing services, car dealerships. Like the list goes on and on that are getting dragged into or called into this for accountability purposes. So I would say you really need to do your homework as a business leader, and you really need to know, and then you need to make sure that you get it implemented.
Yeah, so good points there, my friend. And what I'm going to say about cybersecurity laws and regulations and how they're going to affect your business and how you can ensure compliance, it's pretty simple. Cybersecurity laws and regulations are only going to increase this year. The government has been given the green light to use different authorities that oversee different sectors of the economy to make sure that businesses are doing this stuff. And CMMC went into effect today. It was published today. So it means CMMC is now the law of the land. So every defense contractor and every person and every business that touches anything with the Department of Defense now has to have a cybersecurity program in place, or they cannot bid on federal government contracts that come through the DoD. And this is not going to stop at the DoD. It's going to be all facets of government. So you're going to have to follow these regulations if you want to do the business with the federal government. Any MSP, any IT company that does business with these entities, these DoD entities that fall under CMMC, they must also be CMMC audited and certified in order to continue to do business with their clients. They don't even have to have a federal contract. So all of this stuff is bleeding down to all businesses. So if there's a business owner or business leader who is waking up every day thinking that they don't have regulations around cybersecurity, call my office, and I guarantee you within a couple hours of discussing things with your business leaders, I'll be able to figure out what laws and compliances that you need to follow. Construction companies all the time, they don't think that they need to follow anything. Well, you have blueprints and prints for probably facilities that are in the critical infrastructure of this country. And if you have blue plans and prints of things like hospitals and stuff like that, you have regulation. Because if somebody gets their hands on the blueprints of hospitals and facilities that are your customers, and it's found out that it came from your network, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, and you're going to have to answer the FBI when that comes down. And if you don't think I'm kidding, just Google it. There's plenty of instances where you can read the FBI showed up at businesses' offices saying, what are you doing for cybersecurity? Because we found your data on some cyber criminal server somewhere that we're about to take down. Happens all the time in this country. How you can ensure compliance, you need to start working with a cybersecurity company who understands this stuff and understands compliance. And not just an IT company, it's going to throw tools on your environment. They're actually talking to you the same way that I'm talking on this podcast right now. They understand that your business might not be directly under a regulator, but your business touches other companies or other entities that are. So you're de facto part of that because you have a contract with those entities and you have to do it. That contract you sign probably has language that says you follow those things and you just don't understand that it's in there. That's what I mean. If you give me 2 hours to go through your stuff, I'll figure out what regulations you have. State and federal governments are all over this stuff. And the biggest thing, going back to what Andre said, they want to know quickly when it happens. And there's only one way to be able to do that quickly, and is to already have a program in place that can alert you and can detect when bad things happen and alert you so you can respond in the time frame you need to respond. 4 days is not a lot of time when it comes to SEC regulations, right? If you don't, once you become aware of that breach, if you don't have a way of getting that 8K filed in 4 days, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So the government's turned up the heat on this stuff big time. So, all right, guys, anything else? We're good there? All right. Probably one of our last topics. We're getting to the end here before we have to go. How much of my budget should I allocate to cybersecurity, and how do I justify this expense to stakeholders? So this must have come from an IT director or IT person at a company. Thoughts here? Who wants to go first? Me, Andre, Randy, go first. Go.
I'll talk about how to justify it, but go ahead. Someone wants to talk about what the budget should be.
Man, I'll just throw out the number that's constantly mentioned. It's 1 to 3% of gross rev on top of your normal IT spend ought to be spent on cybersecurity. And how do you justify that to the stakeholders? Because everything that the stakeholders have is at risk. And it's like, how do you justify to stakeholders that you're going to have liability insurance? You know, there's a lot of things that a business has to have that protect the business. And the way you justify it is tell them, hey, the business is at stake. If you don't have any regulations at all, which there's a high probability you do, if you don't have any at all, at the very minimum, the business is at stake and we need to do something about it. That's my 2 cents. Okay. Yeah, exactly.
All this steak talk is getting me hungry, Randy.
Oh, man, me too.
All right. One thing I would say about how to justify the expense, this is, with cybersecurity, we always said things have changed. The threats are going different ways. They're attacking different ways. So, again, it's not just about tools, but if one day we are always used to the endpoint, or we're always used to the firewall and making sure that the office is now secure, but now they're attacking a different way. So now we have to put more measures in place and more eyes this way. So it's really like a war in the sense that they're trying to attack all different ways. And tomorrow there may be something that none of us ever thought of. And we're like, oh, crap. Okay, now we got to go and figure out a way to make sure that this hole is plugged. So that's how I justify it to our clients when we're, increasing our prices or whatever. We're saying, hey, look, last year, this is how they were doing things, but now we have to also monitor all of these other items too in your business.
Yep. And I am going to say, it's always a risk conversation, right? And businesses have to understand, that the expense is going to be way less than what they're going to have to deal with on the other side.
Yeah.
And it's not just we're saying this to sell you something. It's that we have enough data now to prove this. the cost of a data breach for 2023 report just came out. Cost of data breaches have gone up again. This stuff isn't getting any cheaper to deal with. And unfortunately, it's probably 20% of what you're really going to spend if you have to deal with an event. And you can't predict how long you're going to be down, how long you're not going to be able to conduct business, how long you're going to have to pay employees while you're dealing with the situation. Employees still need to, you can't just, hey, we had a cyber attack, don't come to work and we're not going to pay you. That's not how it works. People are going to show up, they're not going to be able to log into their computer, and they're just going to sit there and twiddle their thumbs. Maybe you'll have a backup plan to use paper and pencil until you get through it, but you're not going to be as productive as you are if you had technology up and running. So there's no real specific answer I can give you. This is why, like, a CTO or a technology person gets paid what they're worth, because they're able to look at the business, identify risks, and say, if we don't take care of this, this is how much we can lose in the business, right? And that's when a CFO and a CEO are going to take notice and understand that it's not just a new technology or new toy that the IT director or CTO is asking for, right? And that's, otherwise, if you don't give them the context that how I just laid it out, that's what they're going to think. They're going to think that you're just trying to get something for your department so you can play with a new toy, so you can maybe get a new skill. They don't understand why the business needs this. And you have to explain it to them. And it goes back to the last question about regulations and laws. There might be laws and regulations that they're breaking if they don't do these things, which could mean they end up in jail or severely fined. At a minimum, they're going to lose their job over it. So these are all the things that you can bring at a personal level to these individuals if they're just focused on maybe the balance sheet, right? And that's kind of, some high level things that you can do to try to get business leaders who aren't in IT to understand that we do need to spend more money, and the expense is justified. All right, guys, rolling right along. This will be the last one based on time. How often should a business conduct cybersecurity audits, and what should they include? I guess I'll say quickly, if you don't know what a cybersecurity audit or assessment is, it's when a company comes in and runs, tools and conducts questionnaires and asks questions about your business process. Hopefully, they're reviewing your business processes from a cybersecurity and IT standpoint, but it's a full assessment on what you're doing in your business, which a lot of people, we do these a lot. And what I see out there is two types of businesses that understand that they have to open everything up to these cybersecurity professionals, these IT people, and businesses that think that they can just hire a company and not share all this information and not be open and not be forthcoming because they don't understand why, right? And audit, you need to have access to a lot of information. And an assessment, you need to have access to a lot of information, a lot of people, and people need to be forthright and honest with you during these events, because garbage in is garbage out. If people aren't telling you the right information, you're going to eventually give a readout or a report to senior management that isn't accurate because you didn't get good information, right? And this can happen with tools too, in my opinion. But really, where I see audits go wrong for businesses is that the business is doing it as a box checking exercise and they're not taking it as seriously as they should, which is the first step in you mitigating your risk, which was one of the questions that we had earlier. Like, how do I mitigate my risk? Well, in my mind, it starts with a risk assessment. You got to know where you are to know where you need to go, right? And that's what a risk assessment does for you in my eyes. So you guys take it from there. What do you think about risk assessments? How often should they be done? Do you have an opinion on that? Because I have a pretty strong one. So,
I would say it also depends on the compliance requirement.
Right.
So I'd say minimum of once a year, and probably quarterly. And for some requirements, I know, I don't know if it's been nailed down for FTC safeguards rule, but I have heard people discuss that they should just literally be ongoing.
Yeah.
If
you're over 200 employees, it has to be ongoing, in my opinion. I've worked with enough companies to say that, like, the amount of time it takes through to get a company of that size, it becomes ongoing at that point. Andre, thoughts on this?
I agree. No, I agree with everything. As far as what they should be looking for, it should be obviously data security, network security, application security, your supply chain, users. So it's basically looking at because you're going to have your IT guy, you're going to have the everyday level one person that's doing the help desk, and maybe they're working on something and they uncheck something. They have to turn off two-form factor for a user just to reset the account, and now they forgot. But who's now checking quarterly to do that audit, or looking at the logs to see if anything that is anything that was changed from the last time? So I agree with that. Just depends on the type of business and their regulations, but at minimum once a year should be done. And then from there you will put tools to make sure it alerts you in the event that something crucial changes. But then once a year you're physically looking and you're going step by step and making sure everything is good.
Randy, any more thoughts on this?
No, I was
the only thing I'll add to this is
your hard opinion that you mentioned.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to this is, what it should also include is it should be a full evaluation, and that's what I was saying earlier. It should be a full evaluation of the business, not just some scans that somebody runs. And what I see a lot of what's being peddled out there by different IT companies is a cybersecurity audit where they only evaluate things from the outside, meaning they ask you what your IP address, or somehow they find out what your IP address is, and they run a scan on that IP address.
Yeah.
And I've sat down with companies where they said, "Oh, we had an audit done," and they said we're good. And I'm like, "Can I see that?" And I get it, and that's what it is. It's an external vulnerability scan. Well, that, number one, it's malpractice if there's a company coming to you saying we did this risk assessment and now you're good, right? That's only one piece of a full assessment, right? And it's kind of, in my mind, it's like a very small piece. Most people don't have externally facing risks because they don't open ports up on their firewall. Like, their businesses aren't that sophisticated. And if they do, maybe they know that they got to protect those things well. I would say the businesses that kind of sleep on the fact that certain ports like 3389 shouldn't be open, those companies I think are just, there's not as many of those anymore as there used to be back in the day. The bigger threat is not patching things that are exposed to the internet quick enough and then having to deal with that problem, right? But at the end of the day, a cybersecurity audit should look at things like business processes, your policies and procedures. Stakeholders should be asked questions about what they are doing in their business, how they're doing things in terms of incident response plans, tabletop exercises. Are you doing them, and what was the result of those things? These are all things that'll tell you the maturity of a business and where they're at with cybersecurity. And these are the things, and this is why you need to be doing these things regularly, because these things will keep you in check to make sure that you're doing the things that we see businesses typically not wanting to do, like tabletops and incident response plan exercises, business continuity plan exercises. I mean, it's like asking people to go to the gym to get them into a room to do these things when you're dealing with most business leaders. But they're critical to reducing the blast radius, and they're critical to making sure that your business can make it through a cyber event. Any other thoughts there, guys? All good?
I had a couple, just going back to the the risk assessment. You mentioned scanning of an IP address.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, so my thoughts are in 2005, okay, that was probably an extremely worthwhile part of a risk assessment because and in 2005 everybody was behind a brick and mortar building. Basically hardly anybody was working online. But these days, even in companies that are 100% brick and mortar, you almost never run into companies that are literally 100% brick and mortar. You've got employees that are out in the field. You've got employees that travel. You still have employees that work from home or work from home part of the time. So anyway, yeah, I think that's when they do a scan like that, they're usually just trying to, it's some sort of a sales tactic, whether that's to get you to sell something or not get you to buy a competitor or who knows what. So, yeah.
All right, cool. So that's about it for the show today. One of us has got to run to a meeting, so we're going to wrap it up here real quick. We'll see everybody in the new year. Please remember to keep sharing our show. Lots of views today, lots of interactions. Sorry to those who dropped comments and questions. We're going to add you to our queue for future shows like this. But if you like the format of this show, we'd love to hear your comments on social media or wherever you're listening to this on your podcast platform. If you like the Q&A type of session and all the different questions we asked and all the different things we got into, we'd be more than happy to continue this format if the fans want that. So have a great holiday season, everybody. Security Squawk will be back in early 2024. Stay safe out there. Take care, everyone.